And now we'll move to step 3, the midtones, which are the in-between values, not the darkest or the lightest. I'll work shape by shape, laying in the midtones, not the darkest or the lightest, and also using the midtones to create smooth transitions from dark to light. I'll show you what I mean. The color has dried on the palette and I'm adding a bit of water to wake it up. We need the consistency of milk. I'm adding water to create the consistency of thin milk here, which will create a lighter value on the paper. And up here it's just a bit thicker, more like whole milk, which will look darker on the paper. Thin milk here, whole milk here. Overall, pretty thin and pale. I'll begin with this shape, using the midtones to create a smooth transition from these darks to the lighter value down here. I'll start with the consistency of thin milk. Pick up a bit of color with a clean, almost dry brush. If this is too pale, I'll use the whole milk instead. To create a smooth transition from dark to light, lay the color over that previous dark. That's a little too pale. I'll rinse the brush and wipe it on the towel and pick up some of this consistency of whole milk. It's just a hair thicker. It will appear darker on the paper. That's better. Okay. Gently lay the color right over the previous darks, and you can still see those darker markings through this application. Now, this shape seems to become lighter in value down here, so what I'll do is rinse the brush and wipe it on the towel so it's as dry as I can get it, and pull the edge of the color before it has time to dry. Pull it into the white of the paper, and that will create a smooth transition from dark to light. And this will work as long as the color is still wet. Now, I'll probably go in with another application of midtone to take that even darker, but I'll wait till it's dry and move to this shape. Again, I want to use the midtone value to create a smooth transition from the dark to the light, and it seems that this shape becomes lighter in value and is lightest down here. I'll use the consistency of whole milk. And I'll start by laying in the color up here, and you can still see those darker shapes through this application. I'm looking at the photo to see where does this become lighter in value. Rinse the brush, wipe it on the towel, and grab the edges of the color before there's time to dry, and soften so that the color fades smoothly into the white of the paper. So we went from dark to midtone to light. When it's completely dry, you can go back in to make adjustments. Next, I'll focus on this shape. I'll use the midtones to take parts of that shape darker. For example, it seems to be a bit lighter in value along this edge. Seems to be darker here in the middle. This is still pretty pale, just the consistency of milk. And it seems to be lighter along this edge too. So I'm laying in the darker shape, using the photo as a guide, working around the lighter shapes. After that dries, I'll go back in with some more midtones. Now I'll move to this shape, looking for parts of this shape that aren't the darkest or the lightest. Seems to be a bit darker up here. There's just a bit of color on my brush, and then it gradually becomes lighter in value, so I'll just pull it down like that. Seems to be a bit darker in value down here too. Pick up a bit more color. And I'll rinse the brush and wipe it on the towel and pull that edge of that color into the white of the paper. So I've gone a bit darker up here and then a bit darker down here. And again, after that's dry, you can go back in to make adjustments. Now let's tackle this shape. I'm squinting. I'll look for not the darkest, but the next darkest parts. For example, right there, I'll gently lay in this mid-tone value, and you can still see the darks underneath or through that layer of color. We've got a lighter shape right there, and then it seems to be darker here. I'm using the consistency of whole milk, creating a darker shape that I see. There it is. It's not the darkest, but it's not the lightest. Rinse the brush and wipe it on the towel before picking up new color. This isn't the darkest or the lightest. This is the darker mid-tones. Often you place a mid-tone right along a dark line or a dark shape to help to create a smooth transition into the lighter values. So I'm thinking about working around the lighter shapes, such as this shape. There seems to be a lighter shape right there. And it seems to be a bit lighter in value right there. Okay, and little by little, we'll keep adjusting. Next, I'll go over to this shape, putting in not the darkest, but the next darkest values. And again, I'll go right along that previous dark edge to help the transition from dark to light. In fact, this whole shape right there seems to be darker in value. Okay, I already did that. Okay, so we're over here. See, I almost got lost there. It's so easy to get lost, isn't it? I'll go right along that dark shape. Wherever you think you see not the darkest, but not the lightest. And we're working around the lightest parts until all that's going to be left is the lightest shapes. I'll go up here now, and this whole area here, I'm going to just lay in this consistency of milk and take it darker. Okay. Now, what we're doing with these midtones is we're creating smooth transitions from dark to light, and we're also creating the groundwork, the underpainting for the fur markings to come. I'm looking at the colors underneath the fur. The color dries quickly. Check with the back of the little finger, and I'll return to this shape. The color's beginning to dry on the palette, and I'll bring some more down from your dark area. Add water. There we go. I'll move back to this area and continue to work on the transition from dark to light. I'm using the consistency of whole milk. I'd like it to go just a bit darker, but I still want to see those darker markings underneath. When you use a gentle touch and a thin layer of color, allowing drying time in between, you'll still be able to see these different layers of color And now I'll grab the edge and pull to create a smooth transition from darkest to mid-tone to light. And you can still see the darkest parts. I'm using the photo as a guide. Now I'll do the same thing here. Make sure it's absolutely dry before applying another layer of color. I'm laying in where it seems to be darker. Now rinse the brush, wipe it on the towel, and before the color has time to dry, grab the very edge and pull into the white of the paper, creating a smooth transition. And I'll keep refining the midtones now. Like maybe it seems to be a bit darker right along there. Make sure you're using no thicker than the consistency of milk, because then it will be easy to soften. Now take a look at this shape again. And I had gone in with what seemed to be the darkest mid-tone, and now do I need to put in any darker areas and work around the lightest parts? What I'll do is just lay in the consistency of milk over this edge. And then I'll put some down here also, taking both edges of that shape darker in value. Rinse the brush, wipe it on the towel, and grab the edge to create a smooth transition from dark to light. Now what I've done is created the beginnings of a curve in this shape. This shape seems to curve towards us. It's darker here and darker here, which causes that area to recede. This lighter shape seems like it's coming towards us, creating a curve. I'll move to this shape, which is lighter in value. I'm squinting as I look at the photo, and I think I see the same thing. Overall, it seems to be a bit darker here. Rinse the brush, wipe it on the towel, and grab the edge, pull into the white of the paper, and I'll do the same thing up here. Now this is almost too dark, so make sure that you're maintaining the consistency of milk, and I'm just softening. So what I've done was gone darker at that end and kept it lighter in the middle, creating the impression of that shape curving out towards us. I'll move into this shape. I'm adding just a bit of water to the palette to maintain that consistency of milk. Rinse the brush and wipe it on the towel so it's dry before picking up new color. I'm going to take this just a bit darker. I'm looking for any places that need to go darker. And now, I'll just take this upper edge, the whole area, a bit darker, just like I did before in the other shapes, and grab the edge, soften, creating the impression that this entire shape is curving towards us. Make it a bit darker down here. All right. Now what's happening is we're beginning to lose the lighter shapes, but I'll show you how to fix that. Let's move into this light shape. It's lighter in value, but it does need some midtones. Seems like it's a bit darker up here. I think it's for that same reason, to create the impression of a curve. All right. I'm looking at that lighter shape. Seems to be, maybe it's darker right along that edge of that lighter shape. Okay, I think I'll leave that for now. Maybe go a bit darker there, but be careful. Don't go too dark. and soften that edge by grabbing the edge with the almost dry brush. Okay, good. Now I'll look at this shape again, and do I need to go any darker anywhere with the midtones? Adding just a bit of water to the palette. I think I'll go a bit darker right there. And maybe on this side. See, I'm creating thin layers of color. And I'll take it darker down there. Okay. What I'm seeing here is we're almost done with the midtones. It's almost time for fur markings, but it's important that the dark values and the lightest shapes are in place before putting in fur markings. And I feel like I'm beginning to lose this shape, but there's an easy way to fix that. I'm adding a bit of water, rinse the brush, wipe it on the towel, and I'd like to go in darker in this shape. I want to make sure that all of the darks are in place in that shape. For example, I think I can take the edge of this shape a bit darker in value. I'm noticing, these are things that I didn't notice before. You could go in and you can reinforce some of the darks. What you can do is go back in and reinforce the darkest parts again. I'm bringing in some more color from this area where I mixed the blacks because I need a bit thicker color. I need more like the consistency of thin cream. And what I'll do is go back into this shape and just make sure the darkest parts are dark enough. I want to have all the dark values in place before the fur markings are applied. I'll just reinforce a couple dark lines in that shape and reinforce the darks in this shape. And I'm not perfectly copying the photo. If you find you're having trouble going darker, try a thicker consistency. I'm looking at all the dark shapes, taking any areas darker that I think are necessary, reinforcing the darks prior to fur markings. As adjustments are made in one area, it affects other areas. And that's what's happening. It's just part of the process. I'm looking around to make sure I see a mix of dark values. The lightest shapes are in place, and the midtones. I'm just looking at the top of that curve, and I think we could go just a bit darker right there. Again, don't feel like you have to perfectly copy the photo. And I'll just go right in here and reinforce that dark around this curve. Reinforce that. All right. And step 3 is finished.